So, Greg, from the time you wrote your book, your hardback, to today, what has changed?
Well, since the publication of the hardbound book, which was summer of 2018, a lot of new evidence has emerged. And it only reinforces and corroborates the thesis of the book that there was this nefarious plot to damage and destroy and depose Donald Trump. And at the heart of the plot was Hillary Clinton. If there was any collusion with the Russians, it was Hillary Clinton paying for Russian information that was then fed to the FBI and the Department of Justice. And it was all, wrapped up in this neat little anti-Trump dossier that was penned by a guy who hates Donald Trump, said he was desperate to stop Trump from becoming president. And he was the guy who was feeding it to Bruce Orr of the Department of Justice. He was feeding it to Peter Strzok at the FBI. And they used that dossier as a pretext to launch the investigation of Trump and to lie to the FISA court to wiretap the Trump campaign. And why Robert Mueller isn't investigating that is one of the great mysteries.
What about all these people who people respect and take seriously, who know Mueller, who've worked with him, who describe him as someone who's very sober? He's not a big political player. He's worked for Republicans and Democrats. And what are they missing here or getting wrong?
Well, I think they haven't examined Mueller in depth, and I spend quite a bit of time in one of the chapters of my book recounting how James Comey and Robert Mueller together bungled one of the most important post-9/11 cases in modern American history. This was the anthrax murders that killed several people in Washington, D.C. They pinned it on a guy by the name of Stephen Hatfield, who was completely innocent, and they did it based on basically false and phony evidence. In the end, Hatfield was completely cleared, and the American government, taxpayers, had to shell out roughly $6 million to him in damages. And Comey and Mueller, who were presiding over that case, didn't have the decency to apologize and say, gee, we were wrong. And now we found out yesterday that Robert Mueller was hauled before the FISA court back in 2002 over rampant FBI abuses of the FISA court, up to 75 phony cases presented to the FISA court, some of which occurred before Mueller, but some occurred during his tenure as FBI director. So, Mueller well knows that the FBI and the Department of Justice have deceived judges, concealed evidence, and perpetrated frauds, and they did it in the Trump investigation.
We're talking to Gregg Jarrett, Fox News, his #1 New York Times book, The Russia Hoax. If you somehow missed it in hardback, lucky you get to read it in paperback with a new preface and epilogue. Jackie Speier was on with Andrea Mitchell, one of your favorites, a liberal Democrat congresswoman, and she said this.
What is your reaction to the president challenging his own intelligence leaders?
It is not normal. It is not normal for the President of the United States to disparage his intelligence experts or his military experts. And yet that's what the President does day in and day out. He is becoming a national security threat himself. And I think we have got to step back now and recognize that he spews out toxic information. He spews out lies.
Your reaction to the Democrats circling the wagons for the intel community, the same party that 10 years ago was telling us, well, you can't listen to the intel community, they got Iraq wrong.
Well, we have 17 different intelligence agencies in the American government, and they don't all agree Just look at their January 2017 report on Russian interference in the election. It's one of the great canards the media loves to peddle, is that all 17 agencies agreed that the Russians were interfering in the 2016 election. Not true. Only 3 of the agencies actually agreed. Others had reservations. So, it's up to the President of the United States to take in all the information from intelligence agencies and make his own informed decision. That's why he's the President of the United States. And our intelligence agencies often do great work, but they're not perfect. It's not a science. It's based on human intelligence quite often, and they get it wrong. Look at the intelligence that got it wrong on weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that led to a long war, trillions spent, and American lives lost, principally based on faulty intelligence. So the president is correct if his instincts are telling him, don't accept as gospel what intelligence agencies are telling us.
Greg, the Mazie Hirono on CNN, she is, again, I think she's one of the attack dogs for the left, and she wouldn't even stand at the State of the Union, like many of the women wouldn't stand, but she wouldn't stand for just basic principles of fairness and advancement, the economy. I think even when Hawaii was mentioned, she wouldn't stand for that. I mean, heaven forbid anything Trump says you can't stand for. So she was on CNN, and I want your reaction. Let's listen.
There are 2 things that President Trump cares about. One is protecting himself and money. The kind of financial ties that President Trump, his organization, people around him have with Russia, for example, Saudi Arabia, any other countries that would compromise how he views our relationships with these countries and what we're going to do. I think those are very legitimate areas of inquiry for Adam Schiff, because we want to know that the president is actually working on the behalf of the U.S. rather than Russia or Saudi Arabia, but particularly Russia at this point.
And by the way, almost no follow-up ever by CNN or MSNBC or any of the dominant media. Almost zero follow-up on any of these blatant lies from the left.
Of course not, because they invited her on the program to spin lies. And, we learned from Mazie Hirono during the Kavanaugh hearings that she is the queen of inane thought and comments. All men are to blame, all men should shut up. My Lord, how does she manage to think with that brain of hers? I found it astonishing that, a great many Democrats were standing up and cheering themselves when the president mentioned a record number of women in Congress. But they sat on their hands, didn't stand, didn't applaud, or if they did applaud, it was tepid when the president was touting the record unemployment for Hispanic and African American workers in America. They didn't applaud or stand for taking care of veterans. I guess Democrats like Hirono have little regard and respect for veterans in America. So, every time she opens her mouth, she tends to put both feet in it.
Well, and Greg, where do you think this all ends up eventually? What you're hearing now is that Mueller's report will probably come out some point by the spring, but the Southern District of New York, again, they got that investigation started because of a spinoff by Mueller to Rosenstein, and Rosenstein kicked it to the Southern District of New York involving Michael Cohen. They got into Cohen's documents, and now they feel like they're off to the races looking at the inaugural committee. And like all inaugural committees, I'm sure there was waste, because it's just anytime you have that much money floating around, there's waste. But they're looking at that and pretty much everything. So the Southern District of New York, that sounds much more serious to me than anything else.
It's not uncommon that people around a president or president-elect try to cash in on their relationship. It's wrong. But I'm sure, his inaugural committee is not the first to have financial improprieties associated with it. The president had no oversight over that inaugural committee and event.
Was Tom
it was handled
Barrack.
by other people.
No,
so,
that was Tom Barrack,
I'm not sure
his
you
pal.
get anything there.
Yeah, that was Tom Barrack, his pal. And there are a couple folks who made a lot of money off of that inauguration. And again, anytime you have a sprawling investigation with this much power and very little oversight, look, if they put a magnifying glass on most successful people's lives, and you have an entrepreneurial, aggressive prosecutor who wants to make a name for himself, look at Martha Stewart, look at Conrad Black, look at Scooter Libby. I mean, this is just the narrative that we've all come so used to. You can indict a ham sandwich on anything. That's Brendan Sullivan's comment.
And unscrupulous prosecutors are forever crossing the line of propriety. The media went crazy when Michael Cohen pled guilty. In exchange for leniency, he tried to implicate Trump in what is essentially a non-crime. Personal payments to two women in exchange for non-disclosure agreements. Mm-hmm. You ask any expert on campaign finance, and they will tell you those are not campaign contributions. But unscrupulous prosecutors nevertheless bribed or extorted Cohen into pleading guilty to non-crime. So, the same kind of unscrupulous, unprincipled prosecutors are members of the special counsel team of partisans. I doubt that Mueller has come up with any evidence of Trump-Russia collusion, but he will no doubt peddle stories in his report to try to create the appearance through circumstantial evidence that something illegal or nefarious was going on. And that, of course, will be pablum for the rabid anti-Trump mainstream media and Democrats.
Oh, yeah. No, this is Rachel Maddow will have her very confusing graphics on television, and she'll be connecting dot from this bank to this person, and it'll be like a spider web, and then at the end of it, like, oh yeah, good point. It's like a master illusionist up there every night. Greg, congratulations on the book. There was a lot of hard work that went into unpacking this because it can be confusing. You made it read like a novel. I really, really respect your work. Thank you, and it's great to have you as a colleague at Fox. You have such a long and storied career in the media, and long before. At MSNBC, where we both were as well, and all those years ago. Oh my God!
Yeah, I'm trying to forget those years, but that was a nightmare. But we'll leave that for another discussion.
Greg,
great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Gregg Jarrett here on the Laura Ingraham Podcast.